All right, Ty. All right. We're live.
We
And
made it.
it's funny that we went live as soon as humanly possible with some other hires. Marcus Freeman, boom, we're there. Brent Venables, boom, we're there. Lincoln Riley, boom, we got to go live. We took our sweet time. It's 28 hours later because I had to go out last night when this was breaking because I had to dominate a bunch of juniors in a tennis tournament, which I did with my doubles partner, and then had dinner plans after that. And so we are doing this after that. We are doing this a full day, and I guess more news has broken. There's some more context to things surrounding Oregon hiring Georgia's defensive coordinator, Dan Lanning, details about the hire, details about who wasn't hired and who he might be bringing with him and what Georgia might be doing in the short term, if not the long term, at defensive coordinator, and a longer, more winding process that played out more publicly, I think, than most of the major openings in the sport. I suppose LSU and USC was a months-long process in some ways, so maybe not that.
Right.
But either way, you have a beer.
I do. I'm drinking out of a boot.
I am not. I'm not gonna. I'm not using apple juice. This is a Rev Pills. It's a local Chicago beer.
Okay.
And on air, you can hear here.
That's authenticity right there.
It
You're
is.
not going to get
Right
that
there.
over on the Josh Pate stream.
I can't handle
on Twitter.
That's true.
Not going to get this kind of authenticity.
What I've heard about? Can I tell you what I've heard about Josh Pate? Serial killer. No.
What?
I've heard he's a good guy. I don't know. I don't know him personally, but he seems like a good guy.
So look.
Yeah.
Bottoms up. Let's take a sip.
Oh my God.
You got your guy.
We got a guy.
You got a guy.
Yeah.
Based on your initial Twitter reaction, it seems as if you're pretty happy about that. So I want to get into that. We'll get into that and much, much more, much of what you just described there in the open.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with the Solid Verbal, you can find links in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. If you haven't already, make sure you head on out to verballers.com. That's where you can find an audio version of this after the fact. Verballers.com is our Patreon. And if you're just unfamiliar in general with the Solid Verbal, there are links down below in the description. Click on that to figure out more about how you can subscribe to our thrice weekly college football podcast, Dan. So,
yes.
That being said, Dan Lanning, at long last, was officially announced as the head football coach at Oregon. As you said, it was about a week-long process, I should say, to identify him as the candidate. Dan Lanning is 35. He's the defensive coordinator for the Georgia Bulldogs. Per 247 Sports, he's the number 8 recruiter in the country. He's had a couple stops around the country. He did some work with Todd Graham at Pitt and then at ASU. He was also with Mike Norvell at Memphis. He was a GA under Saban down at Alabama. He's been a bunch of different places, and most recently, obviously, at Georgia as well. So a young guy. It's a first-time head coaching gig for him. As an Oregon fan, describe the health of the program at the moment. Sure. Describe the situation that Dan Lanning is stepping into, and I guess your level of comfort with turning the reins over to a 35-year-old, maybe not terribly familiar with that quadrant of the country, but somebody who definitely has a lot of acclaim and would have been hired before long.
Yes. So, you take the good with the uncertain, as is the case with all of these hires. And I think you are especially able to relate to, even though Marcus Freeman was an internal hire, I think a lot of the good and bad also can be placed on Dan Lanning's head, given his background and his reputation, which is largely positive or entirely positive. We just don't know certain aspects about what the future holds, given his inexperience and given his lack of head coaching experience. So it was a weird process. It was not an unexpected loss of a head coach in Mario Cristobal, whereas Notre Dame, that was a pretty crazy unexpected loss of Brian Kelly. There was nothing really pointing to it until the moment that rumors started circulating. There was always going to be that part of Mario Cristobal tugging at him to return to South Florida. So not fully unexpected. The Dan Lanning thing, his name was not in that search, not in that conversation. We had heard Chip Kelly. We had heard Justin Wilcox. a lot of local media, in Eugene and Portland and the Pacific Northwest, West Coast was really pounding the Justin Wilcox thing, which came out today that he turned down the job, but I don't think there was full context as to whether there were certain qualifications. Like, you can't bring those coordinators. You can't bring what you were doing at Cal to Eugene.
Right.
And so that, to me, was some context to the Justin Wilcox thing, which I think was probably a reality. I don't think you interview for a job to turn it down. So I don't know, we'll see if more comes out there. But the story here is Dan Lanning. The story here is the good is his reputation as a dogged recruiter, as a very smart defensive mind, as somebody who has trained under some of the best coaches in the country, who has had an incredible amount of success in, and we don't know exactly how much of the defense is Dan Lanning's, how much of it is Kirby Smart's, but I do know, and I've watched some clinic film, that Dan Lanning played a major role in the evolution of Georgia's defense to get to the historically dominant place it was during the regular season, not necessarily the SEC championship game.
Forget about the SEC game, right?
But if you listen to people who have spent a good amount of time around him, that you're right, Ty, this was an inevitable promotion to a head coaching job. I don't know if it was on the magnitude of the Oregon job, but it was only a matter of time. Oklahoma had a considerable amount of interest in him as well before they hired Brent Venables. And so he is incredibly well regarded. And Oregon's a tricky job geographically and where it is in relation to top recruits. Georgia certainly geographically is in about the best place you can be. So it's different. It's absolutely going to be different. But personally, my emotional and hopefully intellectual reaction to Dan Lanning is optimism. Oregon took a swing. This is not a safe hire, given his lack of experience, given his lack of connection to the program, the region, and the conference. But if Oregon has designs on maintaining its status as a playoff caliber program, which it is right now, it recruits like it wants to be. It spends money like it wants to be. It cares and pours resources into the program like it wants to be a playoff caliber program. You need to swing and not be afraid of a coach leaving you in 4 years. That's kind of a reality of building up a huge program in Eugene, Oregon. There are not a lot of huge names who are from Eugene, Oregon, who are from the West Coast, who want to live in Eugene, Oregon for the next 12 years. That is just a reality in which we live. And I think the Oregon Athletic Department, I think some of the boosters who, look, if you're shooting for the sky with Urban Meyer, look, that's your prerogative. That's never going to be a dozen years. You're not going to get a dozen years of Urban Meyer. If that's your guy, that's a reality in which you already live, that you're not getting him for 10 years, for 9 years, for 7 years, whatever. You know that. That's not who he is, especially not in Eugene, Oregon. So short of that, you have to find somebody who is hungry for the opportunity, who's going to make the best, just like Mario Cristobal did, of recruiting, of engaging with talent, of building a program, of maintaining relationships, bringing guys in the portal, selling the program, hiring the best assistant coaches that money can buy, that want to live in Eugene. And that's Dan Lanning. That's the swing. And it's not Chip Kelly. The hunger's not there for Chip Kelly to return to Eugene, to me. The hunger's not there to return to Eugene for Justin Wilcox. And I think programs that look backwards tend to screw things up. Programs that use nostalgia as a criteria, not maybe as the main criteria, but say, oh, wouldn't it be great to this guy's from Eugene. This guy doesn't want to, he looks at this as a destination job. I don't think Justin Wilcox looks at it as a destination job. Just because you go to a school, just because you're from a place does not mean you want to return to there. Right.
Right. So let me back up for a second, if we could. So I think you bring up something important.
Sure.
This is sort of the cycle of the first time coordinator hire.
Yeah.
Right. We saw it with Marcus Freeman, Brent Venables, Brent Pry. There's a list now of programs who are turning it over to highly regarded defensive assistants. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, and maybe I'm being a little bit of devil's advocate here.
I'm ready to do that as well.
The Lanning hire feels like much more of a risk than some of the other ones that we've seen.
Sure.
And you could take Marcus Freeman as an interesting analog. It's not quite the same, but they're both 35. They're both defensive coordinators, defensive minds, guys who are highly regarded and dogged recruiters, as he said.
Totally.
Freeman was on the staff at Notre Dame. He's done most of his work in that footprint.
Right.
He's familiar. with the Notre Dame footprint. Now, Notre Dame's a brand in their case that wants to recruit nationally. So whether or not he's done that previously, that's something he's going to have to learn how to do. Something tells me a good recruiter with Freeman, as is probably the case with Lanning, it doesn't really matter where you recruit. You can find a way to get the job done.
Right. And he'll have a staff and right.
Yeah. So I don't think I am all that worried about it, but because he hasn't been on the staff, because he doesn't necessarily have that familiarity right out of the chute with the Pacific Northwest, I view that from afar and I say that that's much more of a risk.
Sure.
That being said, if I'm a fan of Oregon, I like the risk. I like the move because the program, as Mario Cristobal said on his way out, just listen to what he told John Canzano on his podcast. He loves the roster that they've got coming back the next 2 years. The program's in a relative state of stability right now. And so if you're going to take that swing, now I think is the time to do it. I also give them credit because it wasn't a lazy hire.
No,
it was not a lazy hire. A lazy hire, in my view, is Chip Kelly. I'm sure they knocked on doors. I'm sure they asked Dave Aranda. I'm sure they made the call to Urban Meyer. I'm sure they did all the requisite steps that you have to. But to end with Dan Lanning means that you talk to a number of people.
Yeah.
A number of people. I'm not thrilled at the fact that maybe there is a possibility of Justin Wilcox getting the job because he doesn't do it for me. But
no, same.
It tells me a lot about the process, at least from afar, that they were willing to go to Dan Lanning, that they were willing to entrust him with the program, and spend the time to do it too. Look, this was not a wham bam type of hire like we saw at Notre Dame or even at Oklahoma, right? And that took a couple days. I mean, Oregon took its time here to some extent to identify Lanning, to name him as the guy. And so I give him credit. At the same time, there is a lot of inherent risk here that I don't think you can look past.
No, I think you're right. And the Justin Wilcox thing is interesting. He may well get a bigger job at some point and kill it, hire an amazing staff and win 10 games a year. The concern I have about Justin Wilcox is, for as smart of a defensive mind as he is and as well respected as he seems to be in college football circles, he doesn't put together killer recruiting classes, not on the level of what Jeff Tedford did at his best at Cal. And he's not winning 9, 10, 8, 9 games a year at Cal, which is doable, difficult. And so if everybody's case for Justin Wilcox was, well, sure, he doesn't win, but imagine what he could do with more resources.
Yeah.
Doesn't get me going. It just doesn't get me going. I'm sorry. Like, you're either in or you're out. And this is taking a swing means you're in. And so if you're shooting for holiday bowls, great. That's awesome. That's the type of program you want to be. That's Arizona. That's Cal. That's Washington State. If Washington State gets back to being a Rose Bowl program, I'm wrong and I'll own it. But that's where we are right now, that a lot of Pac-12 programs are shooting for the Holiday Bowl as like strong season, guys. I don't think that's where Oregon is. Oregon is not invested in that way. So the Dan Lanning thing is a swing. And I imagine they did a good amount of due diligence considering where he is from, which is nowhere near the West Coast. And everybody I've spoken to, which is about 3 or 4 people at this point who have spent a lot of time with him, are like, you guys are going to like him. This guy, and he might be gone in 3 years, right? The Georgia job might open up. The Bama job might open up. And he's going 11-1 every year at Oregon and Bama hires him. Okay, it's a risk you take. But everybody, to a man, to a person, has said, this guy has like that it thing. Now, he's
got juice. He's definitely got juice. Yeah.
He's young. He has no head coaching experience. It would have been great if he were like at Memphis and then Oregon hired him. If he were at UCF and then Oregon hired him. That, in an ideal world, you'd like that sort of experience to have like the day-to-day as a head coach and operating a machine at a smaller program, whatever. But we also live in a world in which Dave Aranda is thriving at Baylor. Straight from a defensive coordinator job to another program and thriving. Sam Pittman, an assistant, not a coordinator, but straight into that job. Mel Tucker went from the job that Dan Lanning occupied to Colorado, where he was promising, immediately made that jump to Michigan State. Different scenario, different situation. But it's not always that internal coordinator hire, right? It's not always that like, oh, we hired him from a G5 school as a head coach. Like, everybody has a different path. And at this point, with how late Oregon was operating within the cycle, they had to take a swing. They absolutely had to take a swing on somebody who has experience in a large recruiting machine, which is what it takes in Eugene, Oregon, which is what they built up under Mario Cristobal. So it does a lot for me. It really does a lot for me. Now, the coordinator hires are going to be especially huge with a first-time head coach.
Well, that was going to be my next question.
Please.
So what do we know about Dan Lanning? Look, we know about the Georgia defense at this point. Now,
Right.
the Georgia defense right now is at least one half the talent that is on hand, to be clear. But this defense has gone next level this year. And folks are going to refute it and say, well, what about the Bama game? Well, Bama has a tendency to do that to even the best of teams.
I was going to say, Clemson has fielded some very good defenses.
Yeah.
And
so
Bama has put up. Yeah.
Let's pump the brakes on the one game sample size here.
Sure.
Georgia's been very, very good. They didn't give up more than 17 points prior to that SEC championship game. So
yeah.
I feel pretty damn good about what he's done so far. But he's now going to be the CEO of this thing. He's not an offensive mind. Oregon, I think, is a brand, rightly or wrongly, since Chip Kelly got there, that is associated with offense. A lot of people think Oregon, they think of flashiness, offense, uniforms, whatever. I agree that the coordinator hires are going to be very, very important. What do we know about where he might be leaning there, or do we have any kind of leans from a fan's perspective as to which direction they should turn?
Sure. So the name that's come up for offensive coordinator, which is always especially important with hiring a defensive coordinator, a defensive mind to be your new head coach, is Kenny Dillingham, who I believe that's his first name. It's Kenny, right? Kenny Dillingham. Florida State, Auburn, Memphis, has the connection going back to Memphis. A younger dude who I don't believe has called plays, but has a reputation as being bright. Florida State's offense was pretty inconsistent this year. When it was rolling, it was quite impressive with Jordan Travis. When Mackenzie Milton was back there, when a beat-up Jordan Travis was back there, there were some short drives. There were some not fun experiences, I'm sure, if you're a Seminole fan. I believe Gus Malzahn called the plays when Kenny Dillingham was at Auburn. And he, I think, has a reputation as a good recruiter, but in your offensive coordinator, you need somebody with vision. You need somebody with command. You need a teacher. You need somebody. I mean, Oregon's going to have a new quarterback next year, be it a younger dude or be it somebody from the portal. You need that teacher. You need to have that, like, this is what we're doing on offense. This is why we're doing it. This is how we're going to do it. And this is how we're going to succeed. Now, Dillingham's young. You know, everybody loves to think that they're getting the next Sean McVay, right? They're getting the next Matt LaFleur. Don't know if that's the case. He hasn't called plays. So it'd be cool if that were so. No clue. I don't feel anything either way at the moment. I would have to see it to believe it. Otherwise, Lanning has connections throughout SEC country, Texas A&M, Alabama, ASU, not SEC, but he has connections. And I would imagine, you know, a name I saw was Oregon State's, I think, offensive line coach, has the West Coast connections, and he's sensational. I don't have his name. I think it's Jim something. And he's a great offensive line coach. I know our friend Jeff Schwartz talks very highly of him and the guys that he's helped to develop. And Oregon State had a terrific offensive line. I know he's, at least his name is in the mix. But I know Brian McClendon, who is the current interim coach for the bowl game in the Alamo Bowl, very well regarded among Oregon receivers, who he coaches in Eugene, and they have a very deep stable of receivers. And so I think a lot of those guys are championing his return as whatever it is, a receivers coach and associate head coach. He's actually a Georgia guy and was the offensive coordinator. Did not work out at South Carolina, but has a pretty big national footprint in terms of his Rolodex and his ability to recruit. So I think those are some of the names we'll see. Obviously, there's a couple of guys that are from the previous staff who are sort of up in the air. I don't think the strength and conditioning situation has been set. I believe Aaron Feld is leaving for Miami. He of handlebar mustache.
Right. Yeah.
Name. I believe he's joining Mario in Miami. Mario's definitely going to bring his best buddy, Alex Mirabal, the 5'4" Thunder. I don't know what I'm calling him. But he's gone. He's gonzo. And so we'll see. Tim DeRuyter's gone. He's going to Texas Tech. He hasn't even done his intro press conference yet. So we'll see. I think there's a good amount of connection. I hope he leans on a mix of older and up and coming. And I would imagine he is one of those guys who has been planning for this moment. Lanning. So I'm trying to speak with my chest, right? That's what we've decided, that's who we are now. And so I'm saying I'm in. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. There is hope in the mystery, right? There's hope in what could be with somebody who has succeeded as quickly as Dan Lanning has over the past 6 years.
Well, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
the boot almost got me. They're not kidding in Beer Fest. You have to spin it to avoid the bubble coming down and blowing up on you. But
Yeah.
we've had comments coming in here
Yeah. Should we start
aplenty.
taking?
I wanted to flash a few of them up on the screen. And I thought this one was interesting from Ryan. He says, interested in your take, Dan, on the quote unquote letter
Did you see this?
from former Ducks players on keeping the hire within the Oregon family, i.e.
Yeah.
Wilcox. I did not see this. So talk me through this.
I saw this briefly. It was very strange. John Canzano, who reported a bunch of things during this process. I don't know how many of them were true, but we should get Oregon State and Arizona and Vegas. A bunch of former Oregon players, big names, Mariota, Justin Herbert, guys like that, said, we're sick of guys treating Oregon like a stepping stone program because Oregon hires like these killers who recruit well and then get bigger jobs.
Right.
I.e., I guess Willie Taggart for a year and Mario Cristobal. First of all, I think Mario Cristobal has turned down other big jobs in defense of Mario Cristobal. Miami was that job. And I don't know, like, you're only going to hire people from Northern California and Oregon and Washington? Like, Mike Bellotti went to UC Davis. He's not an Oregon guy. Chip Kelly's from New Hampshire. Like, it's just, Chip Kelly was there for 4 years, right? Chip Kelly just won more than Mario Cristobal did. And that's okay. I don't know. I think this gets lost, and maybe Mario Cristobal was he ignoring former players and not letting them come to practice or something like that? I don't know if there were hard feelings in that regard, and I can understand, feeling not great about your program being like a one that's always searching for the next guy and that there's no loyalty or something like that. But I don't know. I think it's silly. It's like I said before, you're either in or out, right?
I get it. I get it. It's frustrating if you're
Yeah.
constantly jumping from coaching lily pad to coaching lily pad.
Right.
That sucks. It sucks.
Sure.
And Oregon, more than most programs over the last 10 years, has had to deal with just that.
Yeah.
So it sucks. It
But
truly sucks.
They all win, Ty. As I've said before.
They've all been winning.
Yeah.
They've all been winning. And also, what is the breakdown of high-level Power 5 jobs around college football that have not had turnover? Because you could probably count them on like just two hands. Notre Dame was in that category until a week and a half ago, and then boom, right? So it happens quickly, and outside of a handful of programs, truly, the idea of a quote-unquote destination job in college is somewhat dated. Somewhat dated.
Yeah.
It's not long before the NFL is going to come calling for Dave Aranda or Ryan Day or Lincoln Riley or any of these guys.
Yeah.
And so, the idea of chasing that lifer at your program, it's hard. It's hard. Now, maybe Wilcox would have been that guy, but there are many other things he would not have been. So I like the hire. The idea is that each coach leave the program better than when they started. Yeah. And I think to some extent, Mario did that on the recruiting trail.
Mm-hmm.
And, the roster, as we said earlier, is pretty stocked for at least the next 2 years. So there will be a little bit of runway here for Lanning. But the idea of getting our guy, talk to Michigan. It's finally working out for Michigan this year, but they've been chasing.
Nebraska. I don't know. Like,
Michigan's been chasing that ghost now for 20 years.
Same with Miami. Yeah.
Cole, the OC hire seems riskier.
Sure. It seems risky. We'll see. I'm willing to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and I'll judge them. Like, look, I waited to watch Anthony Brown. Like, okay, let's see what Anthony Brown can do. He's fully empowered this past year with a good offensive coordinator, whatever. Didn't work out. And so, again, Kenny Dillingham, I believe is his name. He's working for Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn, and it's their offenses. At this point, this is his. His offense is fully weaponized with his alleged Oregon connection and hire now. So it's risky. I don't know.
I'm not crazy about that hire.
I don't know but who's the name? Who's the Joe Brady? You can pay Joe Brady $2.5 million to come to Eugene for
Joe Brady
2 years.
Was in the NFL today.
Yeah, he's staying in the NFL. I didn't see that. Okay, so who is that? Kirk Shiraka's locked up, Ty.
No, you don't want Kirk Shiraka. Here's another one.
Go after Mike Yursich. Who is that name? You just got to tell.
Shay says, with Tim DeRuyter gone, it's hard to look at this hire as anything but an upgrade for the Oregon defense.
Sure. Also curious to see who the defensive coordinator hire is. I know I saw some I don't remember where I see these things, so I apologize for not having attribution here, but like maybe it's a Georgia position coach, somebody with whom Dan Lanning is familiar with and understands what he's trying to do with his defense and the defense that he was running at Georgia. That could be a possibility. Defensive line coach, a secondaries coach, whatever. Obviously, Dan Lanning's background is with linebackers. I think he was the outside linebackers coach and defensive coordinator at Georgia. So I could see a name like that, a younger up and coming type who could just assist Dan Lanning if Dan Lanning is fully planning to take charge of this defense. No, I think it's fascinating.
Ben writes in, he says, Dan, if you go across the defensive starters, and I believe he followed this up by saying defensive starters at Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the second string guys, they're from the East almost exclusively. What is Oregon's recruiting like for non-West Coast for the Ducks? So he's speaking to the point we mentioned earlier about the footprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dan Lanning, in his case, if you go and if you look at who he has recruited in his short time, in his 2 years, whatever it's been at Georgia, it has been mostly guys in the Southeast. He did work in getting in Brock Vandegrift, big quarterback who came in, big quarterback recruit for Georgia.
Kobe Dean, like there's a bunch of big names.
I mean, he's reeled in some big fish at Georgia, but those are guys that were more geographically centered around Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
I feel like the Oregon brand has definitely expanded
Mm-hmm.
over the last decade plus now. It's definitely in a better place. It's definitely more of a national brand. They've done good work on that front. But walk us through the non-West Coast angle for the Ducks.
So the two best players on next year's defense, I don't believe either one of them is leaving. I think they indicated they were pretty excited about the hire. Noah Sewell's from Utah, so that's West Coast footprint, but not on the coast. And Brandon Dorless, who I believe is from South Florida, the Mario Cristobal footprint. He was a defensive lineman opposite Kayvon Thibodeau, who was especially disruptive and I think will be a huge name nationally next year when he sort of gets the spotlight to himself on that defensive line. They've recruited all over the place. They've recruited Texas, Utah, Colorado. They've gone to Florida. They've gone to the Carolinas. They've gone to the Midwest for some linemen. So defensively, look, DJ James, I believe, announced transfer portal. I want to say he's from Alabama. He's from the South somewhere, one of their starting corners. They obviously hit Southern California hard on the West Coast. The safeties, Verone McKinley's from Texas, and he was like an all Pac-12 type performer. I think he led either the Pac-12 or one of the nation's leaders in interceptions. They call him the general. He was sort of the heartbeat of the back of that defense, made a ton of plays. I'm trying to run through other defensive starters. I remember there's a lot of West Coast up front, but really they hit Utah hard. I think they have a linebacker commit from Utah. Dante Manning is a rotation corner. I want to say he was a blue chip corner from Missouri. They've got a kid from Nebraska this class, and they had a kid from Nebraska in the previous class. So Mario Cristobal went out and found fits for this defense, especially some higher level talented guys, and made it work. So even, I mean, the past few years, Oregon's a team that, while the brand is strongest on the West Coast, it's a pretty strong national brand. And so they've gone to Georgia, they've gone to Alabama, they've gone to Florida. This is my Howard Dean once again. And they've developed guys who look like, high level 3 stars and developed them into all Pac-12 level performers. So they're in a good place in terms of depth, in terms of talent, if everybody holds.
Jonathan says the letter is silly. Cristobal went home.
Yeah, that's fine.
These former players are sounding selfish. The hire isn't about them. Yeah. I mean, I agree from the standpoint of it being silly.
Yeah.
I agree to a much lesser extent about the idea of selfishness because let's be honest, Jonathan, whenever your team, especially if you're an alumnus of the program, is looking for a coach, there's going to be a lot of raw emotion.
Sure.
So I get it. But I agree. It's sort of silly.
Get me some more questions. More
All
comments.
right. Let's say, here we go. Here's a naysayer. Roger Dodger. Dan Lanning's a step down for Oregon until proven otherwise. There's a grain of truth in that.
Yeah, well, everybody needs to prove exactly what they are. Well, here's what Oregon was under Mario Cristobal. A great recruiting program, a threat to win the Pac-12 every season. And look, they beat Ohio State. Ohio State and Oregon were both fringe playoff programs near the end of the season. And Mario Cristobal was unable to find a quarterback in 4 years who could supplant a guy that Phil Jurkovec got processed from Boston College. So look, of course he's a step down because Mario Cristobal has already proven himself to be an at least good to very good national head coach. It's a step down, but that's the beauty of the sport, right? We're not selling wins, we're selling hope. And
Selling
so
hope, baby.
right now, that's
Years
what
of
we're
hope.
selling. Of course, same page.
Jeff, curious on your opinion on Lanning coaching through the playoff.
Yeah,
Similarly, Moorhead staying on for the Alamo Bowl. Aren't these guys totally elsewhere mentally? Why stay? Well, look, if you're Lanning and your team's in the playoff,
yeah,
uh, don't pull a Brian Kelly, okay? Don't pull a BK
yeah,
and stick around for that. Not to say that it's going to improve your stock anymore because you're bolted down with Oregon, but
hmm
then you have another recruiting chip that
hmm
you can play with when you go out west. Oh, by the way, I won a national championship or I won a playoff game as defensive coordinator for the Georgia Bulldogs.
sure,
I would think that's something that you could add to your resume
yeah,
that would work, um, among other things. So I
yeah,
get it, and I get that there's a loyalty to the program. If the shoe were on the other foot, and if Dan Lanning were coaching Oregon in the playoff, you'd want him to stick around as well. So
of course,
I appreciate that loyalty to the Georgia brand, especially if I'm a Georgia fan. And I think Oregon, you would want to be in the same class. Uh, the Moorhead thing, I don't fully understand sticking around for the Alamo Bowl, but whatever.
yeah,
I have wondered, and I don't know, Jeff. I have wondered how coaches are able to kind of keep both boats afloat at the same time
yeah,
because it's intensive work. It's not, they're not working like a 5-hour shift here. This is intensive work to get your program ready for the playoff. If you're Dan Lanning, you're
sure,
also kind of in the heat of the recruiting season right now with the early signing period and whatnot. And so it's tough. It is
yeah,
tough, but he's not the only guy to do it. And I'm sure that Oregon will provide staff and whatever support he needs to make sure that he can keep things going.
sure. Yeah, on a certain level, obviously, as an Oregon fan, you'd love to see the coach be like, "I'm coming to Oregon. I'm fully committed to Oregon, and we had a great run at Georgia, and those guys are super prepared, and they're going to do great." But on a certain level as well, it reflects well upon him that he's finishing the job, and he can
I
go
love it.
out and say, "I'm loyal to my guys. Obviously, this was an opportunity for me and my family that I couldn't pass up, but we're seeing the job through. That's just the kind of guy I am." Also, during what I know you are assuming is 2 Georgia playoff games, right? You're assuming they beat Michigan. That's you're feeling strongly about that, and then they'll
I
play
do.
Alabama again
I
or
do.
Cincinnati, as we all hope. Um, that it's going to be nothing but Dan Lanning took the Oregon job. Dan Lanning took it's going to be Oregon, 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 Oregon during those games. Not the worst platform
You
to
could
have
do
your
worse
school
than
being
that.
mentioned. So it's I think ultimately reflects well on him. I hope he's prepared to not sleep until March because that might be his reality. And I don't believe he is coordinating the defense. I think he's coaching, but I think they sort of named Glenn. I think it's Glenn Schumann, who's the co-DC, and Will Muschamp is going to be helping out with the defensive
Big
leadership.
Billy's back in town. All right. Jason says the innate problem of hiring a defensive coordinator as your head coach. You pick the wrong
Sure,
OC, it can sink your tenure. If you hire the right guy, you're going to replace him once he leaves for his own job.
sure.
I mean, that's just college football, man.
That's college football. Yeah,
That's not that's
and
not a
it's the same.
DC thing. That's a college football
It
thing.
goes the other way with offensive coordinators and hiring the right defensive coordinator that you trust and you have some kind of vision for what you want that defense to be. And it can go wrong, it can go right. I think it's already happened both ways for Dave Aranda and Baylor, hiring Larry Fedora, then replacing him right away with Jeff Grimes. And so, from everything we know, Dan Lanning has a bit of killer in him. And so if it doesn't work out with Kenny Dillingham, I don't think he's just going to stay loyal because he has this relationship. He wants to win games and
Sure.
he will do so however he can.
D'Lo, Mario was an amazing recruiter, but he needed to work heavily on game and
Yep.
time management. You've spoken to that point
Yeah.
several times over, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. I know we have a couple of USC fans in here talking about like LA's back, USC's back, SoCal recruiting is over for everybody else. And I'll remind you, USC generally recruits really well.
Yeah,
USC is just a
recruiting's
place.
not the problem at USC.
Yeah, USC is just a place where there's just disappointment. That's the brand at USC. Until proven otherwise, it's just a disappointing place to go to games, watch players, to play yourself. Like it's just, I don't know. Is it going to change for Lincoln Riley? I mean, he is in that USC mold, right? That he ran away when things got tough, like Pete Carroll. So it's a
Ooh.
fit. It's a fit. That's
Ooh.
what I'm saying. Oklahoma's, can't field the defense, can't, win the Big 12 anymore, go into the SEC. Lincoln Riley's a fit. Things get tough get going.
Wow. Okay. Speaking from the chest here. Keep the
Yeah.
comments coming. By the way, if you're just stopping by, we're the Solid
Yeah.
Verbal. Don't forget to hit subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing these, as we need to. Frankly, I don't know where the coaching carousel goes next. Maybe Ryan Day will take the Bears job. That would be a thing that we would need to break in and do a live stream to talk about. But otherwise,
Well, it's just Matt Campbell. Just Matt Campbell or Luke Fickell's going to take that job. That actually might be the most greased up carousel. We're just like, oh, very smooth. Here comes Luke Fickell trotting into Columbus for part 2 of his tenure there. I feel good, and I'm not terribly worried about Georgia. I think that machine is going to continue. In these types of shows, we say, okay, this guy left. What's left behind? What are they going to do? Georgia's probably going to be just fine on defense, just fine recruiting, just fine filling out that staff. Whether it's just Will Muschamp getting that promotion to co-DC or something like that. I honestly, I wish I had more insight into what I expect from Dan Lanning. Hasn't even done the intro press conference. I can't even tell you, oh, he really came across impressively.
Well, he has. I've watched about as many interviews as you can find on YouTube.
Sure.
Dan Lanning.
Yeah.
And he's younger, he's energetic.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, for whatever that's worth, it's encouraging. And so it's definitely not the lazy hire. And I come back to that. I felt that would have been the move. Or that would have been the labeling for it, if you will, if they had gone the Chip Kelly route. Chip Kelly, it felt like with his buyout being $9 million, granted goes down to 0 on January the 15th, but it just felt like it was always sort of a leverage play. Yeah. As you said, maybe a week or two before Cristobal ever left for Miami, Chip Kelly was in a pretty good spot. Living in Beverly Hills, kind of had the world as his oyster. So it didn't seem likely to me that he would be the next coach. It seemed likely that he'd get a call.
Right.
That's, that's probably the easiest thing to predict of all time. But I like that they went this direction. I like that they went younger. I like that they're trying to take a swing here.
Can I put you in my shoes, my Air Max 1s?
Sure.
You've seen my Air Max 1s. I really like a good Air Max 1. That's what does it for me. Marcus Freeman follows Brian Kelly to LSU. Notre Dame hires Dan Lanning.
Yeah.
Where's your head?
Probably in the same place that it is for Oregon.
Okay.
Probably in the same place that it is for Oregon. In the Notre Dame case, Notre Dame had 3 very obvious names that came up. And they were also in a different situation, being so at the time that BK left, they had an opportunity to actually make the playoff, which is rare and doesn't say much for Brian Kelly. But nonetheless, those were the circumstances that he left the program in. So Notre Dame felt itself, I think, a little bit more, felt more of a need for urgency.
Totally.
Because they needed to get a guy in place, and Gary Barta had gone on TV and made this asinine comment about they're considering it. And it's like, okay, we got to name a guy. As Pete Sampson said on our show, they were talking to Marcus Freeman on Monday night already. So I would say without that kind of dynamic in play here, if I found out that they went and hired a 35-year-old guy, no real connection to the area, I would have been uneasy with it, but I would have liked that it's a swing. And it's also not like a Ty Willingham hire, which they kind of did out of desperation. Another defensive-minded guy, right? Like this was a hire in Dan Lanning, if he were to be at Notre Dame, where clearly they went out after a guy who's on the rise and very well respected in that assistant pool. So I think you like it, but I do feel like there is a lot more inherent risk here, Dan.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the thing is too, and I think this is a fair discussion point that, he doesn't have a connection to the West Coast and he doesn't have a connection, to Oregon, the Pac-12. He recruited a lot of players or some players that have considered Oregon, are at Oregon, are considering Oregon. There's a familiarity with him because Georgia does recruit. They recruit nationally, right? Like some of their best players, they've recruited California. So I don't know if Dan Lanning specifically has, but the reaction from people you would hope there was a reaction from, some of the better players on the roster, some of the better players considering or committed to Oregon, they're familiar with him. Everybody's familiar with the Georgia defense. Everybody's familiar with the 2021 Georgia defense. So I feel like at least in the short term right now, his reputation will precede him, which I think is a great first step. And man, the reaction that I liked seeing was Georgia fans thinking or saying out loud, online, whatever, saying, "Man, this guy's great. You're gonna love him."
Yeah.
Like that was, if there's an element of like I remember when Mario Cristobal was promoted, people were like, great recruiter at Bama, but like kind of got demoted and was just coaching tackles, like was kind of shaky in certain areas. It seems across the board, Georgia fans are like, other than the ones bitter about the Alabama game, which I totally understand. Big picture, Georgia fans were like, this guy's a dude. This guy is, this is inevitable, and like you guys are gonna like him. So I like that. I do that. That's an encouraging early sign.
Andrew with the shot fired here at the
I'm ready.
USC fans among us. I found a more friendly place to take your family instead of Ryan Field, the Coliseum. Ooh, that's a burn. That's a burn.
The Coliseum is a very good time. When the Coliseum's rocking, it's a good time. I grew up and I've been to USC games. I have a ton of friends who went to USC. It's a backwards looking place. Hopefully it's the one that lives in the present tense and looks forward, moving, that they have a more professional program infrastructure, whatever. But if you look this past couple years, there's not a lot of noise complaints, I would say, in the general vicinity of the Coliseum.
No.
Not a lot of that happening, in the West Adams area.
By the way, thank you to Andrew. That was a super chat. He paid us $5 to get that on screen.
Thanks.
So if people are going to pay us money to put the comments on the screen.
If you want to drop us $5, $10, $15, $20, we will put it on screen and we will give it as much attention as we can possibly muster, as I'm, I don't know, 71% into this pills.
That's a problem for you. Here's a good one, and I'm glad that Alex brought this up. Thank you, Alex, for reminding me.
Yeah.
The craziest part of the Oregon coach search was the Twitter Spaces conversation. Pretty wild that Rob Mullen stopped by at some point. So I don't actually have the full runtime of this stream, but it lasted several days.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I believe the host fell asleep and somebody else jumped in. It was like Thon at Penn State that just keeps going through the night. You just keep going and until you like shoot off the white smoke or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It was still going as of this morning when I took a look. So,
wow, really?
Yeah, I mean, the stick-to-itiveness among the Oregon faithful to get the Twitter Spaces going, to have this ongoing conversation. They brought in friends of coaches, family members, players, the works to get their perspective. Unless you listen to the whole thing, my guess is that you probably missed out on a lot of the insight because there was a lot of fluff there. There just by default had to be. But also, I know a number of folks who were in those spaces who said it was really insightful and they were hopeful that it was going to inform the national conversation on the coach hire and just the Oregon program at large. So
sure. By the way,
kudos to those guys for
somebody
doing
says there's a new one. So Alex said it's still going too, or a new one, I guess, is still going. Joey Harrington is talking about the letter right now.
Oh my gosh.
Letter. Holiday Bowl Harrington. I know he led Oregon to a Fiesta Bowl. I know, but that's the goal, I guess, of some of the players on there. Like, let's be like a really impressive 9-3 and just like really, be a threat as an elite underdog. Like, okay. The Twitter Spaces thing was really cool to see. I dropped in once. I didn't talk or anything, but it was a couple guys who work for the Oregon program. It was former players, current players, parents of players, and by and large, from what I could tell, and then a couple of fans running the thing, it was a really cool way to use social media and to bring community to a very strange situation. I came away very impressed. I was in there for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And, you're always going to get your fan opinions that are a little out there, and that's fine. I mean, that's what fandom's for, right? Just a collection of opinions. So they seem to moderate it pretty well. And I don't have a lot of technology thoughts, but yeah, I see this. Adrian said Dan Lanning's brother apparently showed up and was there till 4 a.m. I saw that, and I don't know. I think making the world a smaller place can be dangerous. But for stuff like this, It's very cool. It's very cool for something as fun and community-based as college football fandom. Now it can get to a strange place. If you follow was it Message Board Geniuses Twitter account,
Oh yeah, no, it goes there.
it can get to a strange place. But, yeah, bringing people together like that for that common background, I thought that was cool. I'm for it.
It
I'm pro.
it was very active over the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks in college football with coaches coming and going. I
Yeah.
mean, there was a similar one. It didn't last as long because the Notre Dame search didn't last as long, but there was a similar one by some former players on the Notre Dame side,
Nice.
where they kind of came out and said Bruce Feldman actually credited the guy who started that Twitter space with being the first to report that Marcus Freeman was going to be the guy. So
Really?
strange times we're living in, but the Twitter Spaces has definitely taken on a life of its own now as a coaching search is. I would imagine at some point now we're going to be wrapping this thing up
Yeah.
on the coaching carousel. I have said that before, but it
Yeah,
is
there's
getting pretty late
always
stage
Yeah.
at this moment in time, and so we're probably getting close to the point where we're just about done on the head coach movement. There will be a lot of movement on the recruiting side, certainly on the assistant side as well, as we get a little deeper into this thing. But
Yeah.
it has been interesting to see how that's being used, and it's definitely been very, very popular among a lot of people who listen to our show and write in to report their experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who that would be. I don't know who that surprise candidate is in February after signing day. Like, does Matt Campbell take a job at Enterprise Rent a Car? Like, what? Just like a random, like, I'm done. No, but
Well, but I
it'll be
mean,
somebody. Yeah, you're right.
another example could be, and we've talked about it on the show, but like Kyle Whittingham at Utah.
Sure,
Does he ride
retirement.
off into the sunset after the
Sure.
Rose Bowl?
Hmm.
Um, there has been speculation that he might not be too much longer for Utah, but you have situations like that. We had a situation like that with Mark D'Antonio
Yeah.
leaving Michigan State in February. The Mel Tucker thing kind of coming at almost a moment's notice, bringing him over from Colorado. So there's probably still some movement out there. I just don't know if it's going to rise to the level that we've seen over the last 2 weeks with
Right.
Oklahoma and LSU and Penn State, Notre Dame,
Hmm.
Florida, right? Oregon, so many big jobs that have
Sure.
come open. It's sort of tough to top that.
Are we doing a Tony Elliott stream? Are we doing a Mike Elko
We're
stream?
not we're not doing an Elliott or an Elko
I don't know what
stream,
the line is. I don't know.
but we may
Major
have to do
program line.
something when Clemson finally decides who's going to run its team.
Well, I think it's
Um,
still going to be Dabo, as far as
it's
I
still
can
gonna be
tell.
it's still gonna be it's still gonna be
Yeah.
Dabo,
Yeah.
but the coordinators, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I saw Willie Taggart's name come up for offensive coordinator. I don't know who it's going to be on
Yikes.
defense for Clemson, who's taking the AD job, if that's a promotion within. But yeah, Clemson, one of those teams, one of those programs, usually, and this happens everywhere with major programs, that there's going to be that reboot. Clemson has avoided it for quite some time. Here's reboot season for Clemson.
Here's Matt.
Okay.
Mario, I think, Mario showed us that muscle is the direction we need to go. And it's attractive. Our athletes seem to buy in, and this hire
Sure.
secures this new identity. So um I think
Okay.
if you can build like a brawny Oregon Ducks squad, if you can build a killer defense in the Pac-12, you can go places. Because it's
Sure.
just not a conference right now that is associated with killer defenses. There are a couple programs that can play it. And Oregon,
Counterpoint, Washington has built some defenses and hasn't gone places. Yeah, they're a playoff program. I get that. No, I hear you. I My problem with this is Chip Kelly Oregon teams were better than Mario Cristobal Oregon teams. They had more success within the Pac-12. They had more national success. So you know how I feel about the Chip Kelly teams. That I feel like people like you putting the finesse label on them is misguided and dumb. But yeah, Mario Cristobal had a specific vision, had a specific identity in mind for this team, and he recruited on a higher level. He built a deeper roster than Chip Kelly did, but the deficiencies were clear. And if you have an Oregon team, if Justin Herbert were the quarterback for this year's Oregon team, they would be blowing out more teams.
yeah.
Not the reality in which we live. And so um, I love the identity. I love the recruiting. I love all of those things. But if if you don't have a quarterback and if you don't have an at times lethal offense against lesser teams, doesn't matter. If you're scoring 17, well, how many points did they score in 2 matchups against Utah?
Yeah, not
I mean, like,
enough.
yeah, 7 and 10. I think that's 17. I believe that's what it is. If that's how you're capping your season, then it doesn't matter the brawn. It doesn't matter the muscle because they got flattened when it counted at the end of Mario's tenure. So,
Cole wants to know about Mario's newfound jet black hair. I haven't seen
oh,
that.
did you see this?
I didn't see this. This would be the kind of thing that we would report on the show.
Yeah, that's true. He's dying for the Miami job. You see what I did there with
No,
dying?
that was good.
Dying.
That was good.
I did see that. I did see he appeared to be tanner and with darker hair upon his South Beach arrival, which might just be a Miami thing, a Coral Gables thing, a South Florida thing. But I did see that Eugene gets a little bit gray around this time of year, and so maybe the sun came out and he was like, I need a little bit of a glow up. I did see
well,
that.
nothing could top Jim McElwain.
Yeah.
But good for Mario to get some raise. Michael reporting just on our quick comment about Clemson coordinators, past 2 Clemson offensive coordinators, have not really worked out. Saying don't hire a Clemson OC.
Let's take a look at how things have played out for Oregon coaches when they've left, since this is an Oregon stream. Mike Bellotti gets the athletic director job when he's pseudo-forced out for Chip Kelly. Doesn't work. Done. Goes to ESPN. I thought he was actually pretty good in the booth. Chip Kelly goes to the NFL, starts well, then goes poorly. Power struggle in Philly, and then goes terribly in San Francisco. And now there's a faction of UCLA fans who want him out in Westwood. Mark Helfrich started really, really well, promising. Marcus Mariota, the tail end of his career, gets fired after going 4-8. Has not coached in college since. I think had 1 or 2 years with the Bears that didn't work out, is now in the booth. Willie Taggart, hired by Florida State. Does he make it 2 full years? I don't know if he made it 2 full years.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Goes to FAU, where they are fine. Nothing special. And Mario Cristobal is now another step. Andy Avalos, we'll see what happens at Boise State. Jim Leavitt has not had a great career post-Oregon. We'll see about Joe Moorhead. Marcus Arroyo has won a game. That was, gets a head coaching job. You take that job. But it's tough, man. I don't think it's a post-Oregon curse. I just think it's tough in college football.
It's tough. All right. Sacred Grove likes the hire. No
Great.
controversy at Georgia, A+ recruiter and a defensive mind.
Good with it.
Adrian says, serious dilemma. Does Oregon burn Ty's red shirt? Not my red shirt, Dan. You can explain.
Who's to
Ty
say?
Thompson.
Yeah.
And gain experience in the bowl game. Do we run with Anthony Brown? Personally, I feel if Ty is what we think he is, he's gone after 3 years anyway.
So Ty Thompson is the reference. Ty Thompson was a borderline 5-star. He was like a 5-star on one of the services, something like that. I'm trying to go to see he's played 3 games this year. So he doesn't burn his red shirt by playing a 4th. So the point is moot. I really hope to see him in the bowl game. It's a, skeleton staff. Joe Moorhead will be calling the plays. So there's at least that. There's familiarity there. And the interim coach is Brian McClendon. So really hope it works out for Ty Thompson, because I think he has the tools to be a very successful quarterback. But yeah, I really hope we get to see him. I don't know what the point would be to play Anthony Brown extensively against Oklahoma.
Any other shots here, Dan, that you want to take while we're on the air?
Shots like you want me to put down people?
Well, either at
I always have USC thoughts. I always have Washington thoughts.
Shots is the wrong phrasing. Any parting shots?
Parting shots
that you have here, because I feel like we're winding down. I feel like we've gotten most of the stuff that we have to say off our chest at this point. But again, Dan Lanning, 35, coming over, going to be your next head football coach of the Oregon Ducks. Prize recruiter, as I said earlier, number 8 in the country per 24/7 Sports. Has been a recruiting coordinator before at a couple of his previous stops, at 2 of his previous stops, in fact.
Yeah.
Has been a recruiting coordinator. So not only knows how to recruit, but knows how to organize the effort, which is important. I don't care who you are and what program you're running. I like that about him. The Georgia defense has been top-notch, historic.
But we don't know we have an all-time great defensive mind as head coach there. So in terms of the pie chart, is it 58% Kirby? Is it 77% Kirby? Is it at this point 35% Kirby? That's something we don't fully know.
Yep. Here we got one from another commenter who thinks the real new coach that's most comparable to Lanning is Venables rather than Freeman. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mentioned Aranda just because it was going from one program to the other as a
Right.
younger defensive coordinator, well-regarded defensive coordinator. But yeah.
Yeah, there's no perfect analog here.
No.
But at least Venables was with that program for a good long time. He was with Oklahoma for a decade.
Oh yeah.
Before he left over to Clemson.
Yeah, Freeman has the familiarity with Notre Dame. Venables has the familiarity with Oklahoma. And the difference between obviously Aranda and Dan Lanning is Aranda was Utah State, he was Wisconsin, he was LSU for an extended period of time. So the assumption is his Rolodex was a little bit more robust in, it didn't work out with Larry Fedora, of course, but that his understanding of how different major programs work was probably more than where Dan Lanning's is currently. So
and
yeah, there's no perfect comparison. And Sam Pittman, of course, was around forever and ever.
The other interesting thing to note here,
doesn't
Oregon open with Georgia next year?
They do, in Atlanta. So totally neutral. I'm going to try to get there. But yes, that is a wrinkle that he should not be judged by. But I imagine Georgia is going to be losing a lot of dudes on that defense, and we'll see what they do at quarterback. So, it's a good time, I suppose, to get Georgia, and it's a good time. Oregon's going to be mysterious in terms of how they use personnel, what they're trying to do on offense and defense. So there's a good amount of mystery there. I don't think a lot of us gave Oregon a shot with Anthony Brown at Ohio State. So depending on who stays, depending on how hard Oregon hits the portal, which I imagine is when Dan Lanning has like 72 hours to lock in a class before the early signing day. Obviously, he can, January, you can have visits and everything like that. But I would imagine Oregon might be in a place to go with a smaller class and round out the roster with transfers. And I just saw 2 offensive line Oregon commits committed to Texas that are from Texas, one of whom is a 5-star. They lost a quarterback commit. There's a couple of DBs in the San Diego area who are well regarded, who I think decommitted, but might be open to returning. I'm trying to read tea leaves of 16, 17-year-olds, and I'm not the best at it.
Good luck with that, yeah. Good luck with that.
But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I imagine, look, my insight is not all that valuable, but I imagine the Dan Lanning attempt will, or if they go elsewhere, it won't be lack of trying. That's my intuition.
All right. Well, look, if you don't already subscribe to the YouTube channel, please do so.
Yep.
Just hit the subscribe button down below. We're going to continue posting stuff out here, even if it's not live stuff. We've got all sorts of big plans through the off season to keep you, the college football fan, informed. We also run a podcast, a pretty popular college football podcast. Just click on the link down below or go on out to solidverbal.com. We'd appreciate your subscription on Apple, on Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts, really. We'd love to have you aboard. And if you really like the show, if you're really motivated to see what we have to offer, forballers.com is our Patreon. So on Patreon, we offer all of our shows early. We do bonus shows. We'll offer content like this in audio only form so you can listen to it as a podcast. We're also running a cool bowl pool right now, a bowl confidence pool. We call it our Winter Wonders contest. If you go to playwinterwonders.com, you can find out more about that. It's only for our Patreon community, but it's bowl confidence pool. Tomorrow at 6 a.m. on the public podcast feed, we're dropping our big bowl preview, super mega bowl preview, as we call it, part 1. So we're going through all the games, going to have great insight in there. Did a ton of research as to who you should pick, why you should pick them, and which direction we're going. So we would encourage you to check all that stuff out if you haven't already. If not, we understand. It's cool. We appreciate you just stopping by again to talk with us about the news of the weekend. That, of course, being Dan Lanning, new head football coach of the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah. And by the way, shout out to Roger Dodger watching this show. Looks to be a diehard USC fan. Looks like he stuck with us for almost an hour.
My man.
And I respect that.
My man.
I respect that commitment. And I hope USC gives us a more entertaining version of what we've seen these past few years. Because end of the day, Ty, we just like fun, entertaining college football.
We do.
So
we absolutely do.
Shout out Roger Dodger.
Roger Dodger. We appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen to the show. Subscribe to the show, Roger Dodger, if you don't already.
For sure. All right, folks. I think that's it for tonight. You can view the replay of this on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thesolidverbal. Pretty much as soon as it's done.
Yeah.
We appreciate you stopping by this evening, and we'll talk soon.
Stay solid, peace, all those things. And hey, go Ducks. I can say that. I'm allowed
Go
to say
Ducks.
that.
All right.